WBAI.org.
This is Tony Roberts, and you're listening to WBAI in New York, the voice of truth since 1960.
The ice is gonna break.
How does it feel?
It feels like times have changed.
To be present, to be here. It is always appropriate to be here. Contemplate. If you ever happen to be someplace and you contemplate, I'm not here. Where are you? So in this moment, be here. Be here. Wherever here happens to be. In this day and time, we have gathered together to contemplate, to dialogue this that is called
Night shift again. 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 Night shift. Night shift again.
I'll be damn late.
Now, where are my people? 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 Where are my people?
talking about it, and I have no idea. I have no idea. I have no idea why I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing, talking about this. I saw something, they saw something. There was a lot of light. That's all I remember.
There's no place to hide.
I wish they'd hurry up with that transmission. I want to go to bed.
I suggest that you reach deep down inside yourself there and try and find something that'll keep you awake just a little while longer, because this transmission coming up may just rekindle your will to live.
Valley Forge, Berkshire, Sequoia. Valley Forge, Berkshire, Sequoia.
This is Com Central. Channel open for Executive Order AC3423.
Listen to this, boys.
Night shift again. 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 Night shift. Night shift again. Night shift again. Night shift again. Night shift. Night shift again.
I'll be damn late.
A few minutes ago, you were having a pretty tough time, I saw, in a dungeon. I'm glad you fought your way out to talk to us. Do you find this side of filming particularly strenuous?
Well, no more strenuous than some of the digs I was in Manchester. No, it's all pretty well worked out, and it's not advisable on top of a heavy breakfast or a hangover. Otherwise, it's all right.
This is your third James Bond picture, and I'm sure that as far as picture-goers are concerned, they could see more and more, but how do you feel about this yourself?
Oh, I think it's splendid. I think it's very good entertainment. They obviously like it, and one every year, 14 months, is a sort of good, healthy issue, I think.
Now, James Bond really conjures up a picture of blondes, bullets and booze. Do you find that people expect you to be like this in real life?
I don't meet a great deal of people, really. I've been so busy. I'm on my fourth film in 1 year, so the chances of meeting people are pretty remote. And only other than going to the theatre or going out to a restaurant to eat or something, or driving somewhere, I leave the house 7 in the morning and get back at 7 at night. So the chances of boozing with blondes and bullets are pretty remote.
Most Scottish actors start in the north and then come south. So why did you come straight down to London?
Well, I doubt very much if anyone in Scotland would have employed me. They employed me, certainly, for the other jobs, but not as an actor. You know, I hadn't any real experience. And it was more a sort of giggle in London at the to join South Pacific, do the audition. Because at the time I was home on a week, down for a long weekend to London, on holiday from the Evening News in Edinburgh. And so when I got the audition, they said, okay, you can come back in 3 months. So I went back and packed my bags, left Scotland, came back and joined South Pacific.
And then it was into television after that?
No, I was did a year or so tour with plays, with South Pacific, came back, did 3 or 4 plays at Q Theatre, which is sort of experimental theatre in London. And it didn't work for about 6 months, 8 months.
I think you've been given perhaps the impression that you've been playing James Bond and nothing else, but a film has recently been released, hasn't it, Woman of Straw?
Yes, and I just came back from Hollywood. I did Marley for Hitchcock, and I was in Canada the year before last doing Macbeth, and I was in the West End just before that doing a Giraudoux play in the theatre.
Concept was CONNERY.
So
Well, afraid you must go, but thank you very much for speaking to us.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Goldfinger broke box office records everywhere. The world succumbed to Bond mania. When shooting got underway on You Only Live Twice, TV globetrotter Alan Wicker dropped in to investigate the phenomenon.
Because of Bond, Connery's a millionaire, and perhaps the best-known face in the world. But he remains unaffected and candid and indifferent to his image. To 100 million cinema-goers, he is James Bond, a character about whom he's read surprisingly little.
I don't know great. I've only read 2 of the books, 1.5 of the books.
Is that so?
Yeah, so I met Fleming 2 or 3 times, and we got on very, very well. I liked him enormously. But we just lacked humour, I thought, in the books.
How has being James Bond affected your life?
Well, this is the sort of outcome of one of the facets, and that's I live in Acton. We have a marvellous house in Acton, wonderful situations. Unfortunately, it's too accessible. It means that people can come, right up front, get in, and it's the only house in the street. It's a cul-de-sac right by a park, perfect situation, but they just come up and sit on top of the cars or come in the gate, knock at the door. It's too easy, and it's the invasion of one's privacy, and I don't believe any of the rubbish about the price of fame or all that sort of jazz. I don't go for that at all.
Have they been unpleasant? I mean, are people unpleasant?
As a rule, no, but you get some real head cases that come round and have the most, sort of absurd requests, like, it would be marvellous to come in and have tea, or could we come in and take some photographs, or could I sign on your wall, or, juvenile, insane ideas. And there's only one way to solve it, is something practical, and that is not to be there.
There was one cutting I read about you. It said you were relaxed and informal to the point of falling apart.
Yes, that's true, times. Well, particularly when I'm drunk.
That's quite endearing. I see nothing wrong with that. Yeah. You also said you weren't living up to your image.
Yes, well...
You weren't grabbing girls in bars, perhaps, you see.
Would they pay the fines if I lived up to the image?
And you are tuned to listen to Sponsored Radio, WBAI, 99.5 FM in New York, and on the web. And this is Night Shift. And you just heard an interview with Sean Connery, who unfortunately has just passed this past weekend at 90 years old. Sean Connery, of course, was best known for playing 007 in the early James Bond spy movies. He also starred in films like Robin and Marion, one of my favorites, Name of the Rose, The Untouchables, Hunt for Red October, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And Sean Connery is one of those iconic actors who, depending on your age, you have certain roles that you identify with him with. He will always be identified with James Bond because he began the franchise that is more than 50 years on and currently stars Daniel Craig. But more importantly, Sean Connery is an icon. He's an actor who has everything that it takes to be a movie star. He's not just a movie star, he's also a great actor. He did win an Oscar in 1987 for The Untouchables, but he had done many great roles and really worked as an actor. There are a lot of actors who you can look back at and they're known for one role, and that's pretty much all they did of note. But then there are actors who may have started in one role, but that just launched a career for them to do a ton of memorable roles. And I think Sean Connery falls into that category. For me, as a big fan of James Bond and heroes on screen and action heroes growing up, Sean Connery was one of 4 of my main heroes on screen. I religiously went to see almost any film he did. So tonight on Night Shift, we're going to have a tribute to an actor, an icon, someone whose work, whose contributions to storytelling have inspired us. We're going to talk to men, we're going to talk to women, We're going to talk about what he represented. We're going to talk about the favorite Sean Connery roles, the favorite Bond films, and the favorite roles outside of James Bond. But we're going to talk about his impact here on Night Shift.
Hurrah. New hurrah.
Now, what you just heard was a scene from the opening of The Hunt for Red October, where very distinctly you can hear Sean Connery speaking in Russian with a Scottish brogue. And only Sean Connery could get away with that because he's Sean Connery and it doesn't matter. I saw a post recently over the weekend after he passed where they said Sean Connery, he could sell anything in terms of the character, and how he was in Highlander and he played an Egyptian Spanish character and he still had a Scottish brogue, and you said, fine. And that's, in my opinion, what sums up Sean Connery. It's just, you enjoy him so much on screen. To talk about Sean Connery, I brought together a panel of Sean Connery enthusiasts and fans and people who are friends of mine who I know love Sean Connery, and we have some guests who are going to come on. So the first person I have to introduce is a man who I could easily say was one of the most talented men I ever met in my life. He could just do anything. I met him in college and he had already written like 3 James Bond novels, and I was blown away just at the idea. Since then, he's gone on to write, direct. He made some great action films in his own right. He's done storyboards for many films. Mike Davis.
Hey,
how are you?
Buddy. Hey, Mike.
All right.
So I have to say I only wrote 2 James Bond novels. I met you.
Oh,
they were
I'm sorry.
Masquerade of Death and Spearhead.
Okay, there. See, only 2. Okay, so, all right, forgive me. In my mind, exaggerated your accomplishment. But for me, meeting somebody at 17 who had written not only novels, but James Bond novels, that blew me away. But you were clearly a Bond fan, so we bonded instantly.
That's right. The greatest moment of my life, because I don't want to delay the other people coming on, but I grew up in an area where there was no geek culture. I wasn't even aware of things like Comic-Con and people getting together and all that kind of stuff. I was alone in my love of James Bond. There weren't any other people that were into things. And then Michael opened me up to this whole world of, oh my God, everybody loves James Bond. Everybody loves Star Trek. And we got these conventions and costumes and, making, our own radio shows. And there was this whole nation that I had. My stupid neighborhood had nobody like it. So Michael was like this conduit to this larger world.
All right. First of all, let me just correct you to say that, no, everybody doesn't like James Bond and Star Trek, but the cool people do.
Uh-huh.
The cool people do. Speaking of cool people, and it's hard to even imagine using cool people in the same sentence with this individual, but this is another man I've known since I was a teenager. We went to high school together, and actually I never knew him in high school, actually, but because we had a mutual friend, we met, and he is a writer, director. He's done feature films as well. He's worked for all the major animation companies. He also used to make, before I ever did radio, I used to pretend to do radio drama, and I had a character that I used to do. Before I actually had produced it for WBAI as a radio drama, which is how I came to be here on WBAI on Fred Giabolt's show. And when I met Mike Davis, one of the people featured on this was a strange young man named Lloyd Goldfine. So
now I'm a strange old man.
Well, you're a strange old man now. You were a strange young man back in the day. Since Mike Davis started it, do you want to bring in your connection, your geek connection to loving, these kind of heroes, James Bond and Star Trek, and what that all was to being a teenager in let's not date ourselves, but let's just say back in the day.
We'll go too too deep into it, but I'll just tell you one really quick story. I remember being 3 or 4 years old, work nights and come home late and turn on the TV, and everybody else in the house was asleep, and I used to be able to see the TV from the foot of my bed if I leaned way out. And he was watching this movie with these cars and these guns and jetpacks, and I'm like, what the hell is this stuff? I had to know, but I was too little. And then one day, as a gift, I got the James Bond attaché case, and I knew this is what James Bond is. It's that thing, and it's this case, and it's these cool guns that are in there, and there's secret messages. And I used to walk around the supermarket with the attaché case that it could fire a dart out of the side of it, and I used to shoot people, thinking nobody would find this 4-year-old suspicious with an attaché case.
That's okay.
So
first
that's
of
where
all,
it started.
That's like, okay, that is clearly why we're friends. Let me just say that.
Oh my God, with a gun that had a gun hidden inside it.
Yes, exactly.
And that's how I came upon a lot of this stuff. My dad, who was a very different type of person than I was, he used to watch James Bond. He used to watch Star Trek. He used to watch Wild Wild West and Mission Impossible. And I learned about those things, and those things, penetrated me from watching them at the foot of the bed at night down the hall. It was great.
I can relate to every single thing you said, and I'm jealous of you, and I have another person who's going to join us who's also a journalist, who's a little older than us, so he's going to bring another perspective. He also had the attaché case, Rob Taub, but I never had the attaché case. Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted the attaché case. I had the decoder thing. I had the decoder thing.
The Corgi car. You had to have the Corgi.
I had something.
No, we didn't. We wanted it.
You wanted it too? You didn't have it either?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Then I was not completely deprived as a child. Then I have one more person here because we have to represent both coasts, okay, with our panel before we bring in our guests. I'm on the East Coast. Mike Davis and Lloyd are on the West Coast. And on the East Coast, joining me is another man who I also met in high school. And again, interestingly enough, just like Lloyd Goldfine, I did not know him in high school, but we had a mutual friend who thought we should know each other, and we met. And as a matter of fact, I think we met on the phone, and we became friends for years, just corresponding on the phone. But the geek connection was so strong that now that he's a real person and he's, this acclaimed jazz artist and a comic book thief and all these things, Keith Brown.
Acclaimed comic book thief.
Keith Brown.
I just want to say thank you. I want to thank the Academy for allowing me to continue to steal valuable comic books. That's the lowest part of my career. The biggest part is stealing comics from Lloyd Goldfine. But anyway, I will say this, Mr. Sargent. I'll just, because they had two spectacular stories that I can't really follow up on. I have my little tiny ones, and it's briefer, so shouldn't ruin the show. I grew up in Staten Island, which is a little bit like Gilligan's Island. Only people leave it, and they should stay there. There's a little theater that I used to go to, and I remember seeing James Bond there by myself because nobody else that I knew wanted to see it. And every time a new James Bond movie would come out, and it used to come out way more often than James Bond movies come out now, I would be the first one there, and I'd be sitting in the theater, whatever time it started, and just absorbing it, and thinking, oh my God, there's this whole universe of fantasy and of imagination, and it kind of fueled everything else I ever did the rest of my life, because I just felt like, just look at this submarine sitting in this huge cavern, and look at these spaceships, and look at this guy with a jetpack. It all seemed like stuff that I didn't see anywhere else, and it was the only place to find it. So I've been a fan for a long time.
We're gathered here. I've got Mike Davis, I've got Lloyd Goldfine, I've got Keith Brown. We lived in different places. Lloyd, you grew up where? In Queens Village? Where did you grow up?
Hollis, Queens.
Hollis, Queens. And Mike Davis, where did you grow up?
Rockville,
Maryland. And Keith Brown, you were on Staten Island.
Only the second James Bond thriller could be more exciting than the first.
He's back. Another Bulgarian they use as a killer. Take a look. You should remember him. This man kills for pleasure.
James Bond, that notorious, amazing Dr. No secret agent, is back, and half the world is out to kill him. As he pits his murderous talents against the Iron Curtain and its velvet women.
Well, I'll tell you something, Goldfine. You're one of the most beautiful girls I've ever seen.
I think my mouth is too big.
No, it's the right size. For me, that is.
From Russia with love comes Tatiana, bait for the trap. From the four corners of the world come the men and women who play a deadly, dangerous game of espionage.
Do not be alarmed, my friend. We will make you as comfortable as possible.
Ali Kerim Bey, head of Station T, Turkey. Krasnogransky, codename Grant, chief executioner of Spectre.
My orders are to kill you and deliver the lecter. All I do, it's my business.
M of British Secret Service. The woman called Rosa Klebb, playing a double cross.
Romano, the door. Romano!
Russia with love. They dance for him. They yearn for him. They die for him. From Zagreb to Sofia, from Venice to Istanbul, from Paris to London, Agent 007 cuts an inimitable path through the palaces and boudoirs of espionage.
James, you're hurting me.
I'll do worse than that if you don't tell me. I'm doing this under orders I know. And what are they?
Even if you kill me, I can say nothing.
You're trapped, Mr. Bond. You cannot escape.
So Rob Taub, say hello to Mike, Keith, and Lloyd.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Rob.
So, Rob, before you tell us your favorite Connery movies, what is your connection to? How did you discover Sean Connery, and what thoughts do you have on him, and what did he represent to you? Because Sean Connery, for multiple generations, probably 60s, 70s, more than anything, but for multiple generations, represented a lot of things. So, talk to me.
I'm from Staten Island. But fortunately, we moved. Oh, wow. Because
look at that.
I grew up with a bunch of thugs that didn't know what a tuxedo was. So they probably would want to no. That's why nobody went to the movie theaters in Staten Island. Then we moved to New Jersey, and I still remember my mother and father had a huge fight because my mother didn't want me to see Goldfinger because it was too sexy and women were in bikinis. And I remember hearing the word sex. But in 1966, I was 10 years old, and I got the James Bond attaché case, which never left my hands. In fact, I brought it to school. I was in 4th grade, and my teacher, Mrs. Patrick, who was this very proper Southerner, called me Bobby. She said, Bobby, why are you carrying that briefcase? And I took the secret knife out. Oh, my God. Sent to the principal's office, and I still got to keep it as long as I didn't remove the knife and the gun. But I just carried it everywhere. It was like the coolest thing you could ever have.
And I have to say I'm very jealous because I had pieces of the attaché case. I always wanted it. As a matter of fact, okay, as we're talking about this attaché case, you know, when I was in high school, okay, not only did I look a little older than I was, I used to wear
And you still do.
Shut up. I used to wear a sports jacket and carry around an attaché case. And in that attaché case, I did not have a gun or a knife or a periscope, but I did have a cassette deck, a portable cassette deck, and a lot of cassettes. Shut up. Shut up, Lloyd. Shut up. Anyway, so I'm just saying, the idea of a teenager that would walk around with an attaché and in their mind think that in any way it could be cool can only come from being a fan of James Bond. That's all I want to say. Shut up. All right, so Rob, I want to ask you, what are your, well, first of all, did you have any other thoughts on Sean Connery? And then I want to know your top 5 Sean Connery movies. Only one Bond. I want to hear 4 other than Bond movies. Do you have any stories? Have you met him? Because you've interviewed everybody.
Connery lived around the corner from me. We lived at 72nd between Madison and Park, and my son and I used to see him all the time when we were walking the dog. And he gave off a vibe that was like, please don't bother me. But smart man. The first time I saw him, I was kind of taken aback because my father used to be a headline writer for the Post, so I'm unashamedly still a subscriber, and he was carrying the New York Post and a brown bag with some milk sticking out of it. He had tennis shorts on and like a white hat. He looked like he had just come off the courts or something, and my son elbowed me and was like, "Hey, Dad, it's Sean Connery." We had the dog with us and everything, and it was just one of those great New York moments. But I did not say anything, and then I knew where he lived, and I stalked him all the time, but never knocked on the door or came to the house. And then I'd see him pretty regularly. But wow, he was one of those people that I knew it was wise not to approach.
That sounds pretty smart to me, actually.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
What time did Sean Connery usually arrive at Wimbledon?
10ish.
Correct.
Exactly. That Sean Connery jokes are like a staple of I definitely have had Sean Connery jokes. We have a running Sean Connery joke which I'll share here on the air later. Now, Rob, so do you have a favorite 5 favorite Sean Connery films?
I certainly do. Okay, this is a tough one, but I'll qualify it. It's Diamonds Are Forever. But that's just because by that time I was 15 years old and had really hit puberty. So it was like the whole thing with Jill St. John and, Bambi and Thumper and driving that Mustang. It was just everything I wanted to do. Going to Vegas.
Jimmy Dean, come on, Bond.
Willard
Exactly.
And Mr. Kit and Mr. Wint. I've smelled that perfume before, and when I did, I smelled a rat. And it was just... I love Thunderball too, but I think just it's embedded in my psyche now that the Diamonds Are Forever was my movie there.
You've been waiting for him. Asking for him. Now he's here.
Who are you?
My name is Bond. James Bond.
He's back in a new Bond spectacular. Kill him!
Welcome to hell, Blofeld.
He's back.
Good evening.
And we're back to what great movies are all about.
Hey, what the hell is this? Hey, listen, you can't do this to me. I've got friends in this town.
Outrageous, fun-making thrills.
I didn't know there was a pool down there.
He's back. the character who runs rings around his enemies in Diamonds Are Forever. Forever, forever, And they're back. Some rare facets of female bondage.
Well, that's quite a nice little nothing you're almost wearing. I approve.
I don't dress for the hired help.
Starring Jill St. John, Charles Gray, and he's back as Blofeld, 007 style.
Good evening, 007.
From the Diamond Territory of South Africa.
Curious how everyone who touches those diamonds seems to die.
The canals of Amsterdam. To the gaming halls of Las Vegas.
Hi, I'm Plenty.
But of course you are.
Plenty O'Toole.
Named after your father, perhaps?
To the rocket sites of Nevada. Sean Connery, alias James Bond 007, is back in action.
Diamonds are forever, 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 forever.
Well, I have, it's funny. I want to get everybody's thoughts on Diamonds Are Forever, just as Rob goes through his list. But I can tell you, for me, I'm a little younger than you, Rob, but Diamonds Are Forever, I remember, was probably the first Bond movie I actually saw in the theater. Yeah. And I remember seeing it, and I remember, part of what makes a James Bond movie to me a James Bond movie is not only, of course, Sean Connery and the girls and the women in this, but it's the music and the sound effects. There's sort of that music that you hear, and it's like you're in a Bond movie. He sees this thing, you're in a Bond movie. So it's just that whole sense of Bond reality. And I definitely remember it in Diamonds Are Forever, even though probably for my age group, Roger Moore was the Bond of the day. Mm-hmm. Sean Connery, there's no comparison. So definitely. All right. So let me hear your next four. Wait, does everybody else have any Diamonds Are Forever thoughts there?
I could go on and on forever. I mean, I understand, Rob, that, we're contemporaries. It was the only Connery movie that came out in the theaters, and I saw it when it was first released. So for me, that was very exciting. Also, remember,
me too.
And I remember opening up the Sunday paper, and the artwork for the poster was fantastic, right? But my problem is when you get to the movie, and Connery doesn't look like the Bond on the poster anymore. You can see.
Yes, that was a factor. He was a little weathered and aged.
Yeah, and when it was quick cut, like my favorite scene was the first one where it's this, where is Blofeld? Right, and then he kills somebody. Where is Blofeld? Ooh. And I like how they connected it with the On Her Majesty's Secret Service without really explaining very much. And I love the set of him where he buries Blofeld in the mud, and it had that whole fantastical art direction, and this fantastical that you could change the way that you looked. But then having watched enough Bond movies over and over again, and I'm like, well, is this oil derrick as cool as a space, a rocket ship inside a volcano? Well, no, right? And there are all these things. I also thought that women that were European were sexier and more exotic than the sort of the voice that Jill St. John had, and her haircut was this perm that looked like, that she was like, more like a sexier version of Moneypenny. And then when the vehicle that Corgi put out was the little space thing with the weird arms, right, was not as cool as the Aston Martin. I was so happy that movie existed, right? But there was not as much stuff in there that I thought was cool. Like, the only thing James Bond did with the moon buggy was crash through walls and go out. Why didn't he do something with the arm, something that was clever with the gadgetry? I just thought it was, all too sloppy, and it just was, to me, I don't know. It would have been better if they just started with Roger Moore a movie sooner.
Wow! All right, that Roger is you put on your cruel shoes there, Michael Davis. I just gotta say, I can't really say I disagree. I have the same issues. There are things I love about that movie, but there are also things that I think like, All right, Rob, let me hear the rest of your list. And unless Keith or Lloyd, you had something to say about Diamonds Are Forever?
No, I agree with you guys a lot. The center holds because Sean Connery, but the filmmaking starts to really go, and the writing starts to go downhill.
Let's face it. The biggest lure of Diamonds Are Forever, that Sean Connery's back as Bond. Doesn't matter if he looks like, what's his name from,
yes,
he looked a little.
Matter. It did matter. But
stop.
Sadly, Connery was like 41 in Diamonds Are Forever. He did not.
I know.
Well. I mean, that's what
I'm saying. No, you know what? If they had the workout gurus of today, and he had contractually, he could have. I don't care about the thinning hair. It was the jowly.
He wore a toupee in the first movie, and Dr. No, he had a toupee.
It's just that he was so jolly, he could have been played. Ernest Borgnine could have played Bond in that movie.
Stop! He was so jolly. Okay, listen, the man just died.
Jowly.
Be nice.
You're a bad man,
Be
Michael.
nice.
A bad man.
Very harsh and cruel.
The Mad magazine, where they spoofed Diamonds Are Forever. You remember the Mad magazine?
Of course.
Yes,
where
of course.
The car is tipping so he can go down the alleyway, and they say, no, Bond is over.
To me, Connery did look a little Bob Hoskinsy in that film. But go ahead. Yes, what do you want to say, Rob?
If you look back at that time, Robert Shaw was this Adonis in From Russia with Love, and 10 years later, he's played Quint in Jaws, and he's an old man, and then dies shortly.
Yes.
Well,
he was a big drinker. He was a big drinker too, so he aged.
Yes.
He probably had a bout with the bottle himself.
A bout with the bottle. Yes, he probably did. All right, but let me hear your other four.
Okay, I have some odd choices here. These are not like the finest performances, just what affected me.
Personal favorites.
I'm here as a fan, not as a critic or a journalist. How's that?
Okay. All right, is Zardoz on your list?
No, Outland.
Okay.
The Untouchables.
Love it.
The Rock.
Outland.
And Indiana Jones. The reason
I love The Rock.
The Rock really affects me is how he was able to. He passed that jowly state and somehow became a believable action hero as an older guy.
Following is a state secret, gentlemen. Disclose it to any party and you will be subject to prosecution. His name is John Mason, British national, incarcerated on Alcatraz in 1962. Escaped in 63. There's no identity in the United States or Great Britain. He does not exist.
Secrets have a way of coming back to haunt you.
There's a hostage situation on Alcatraz. Hostage? 81 tourists. The Rock's a tourist attraction.
The one you train to defend you becomes your greatest threat.
A battery of VX gas rockets is presently deployed to deliver a highly lethal strike on the population of the San Francisco Bay Area.
And the one you abandon becomes your only hope.
You go talk to him.
Me?
Yeah.
Hiya. I'm an agent with the FBI. I'm Stanley Goodspeed.
But of course you are. At least he got his name right.
Now, all that stands between a city and a disaster.
The power of this chemical is way beyond anything you can imagine.
That's why you're coming with us.
Is a man who's never seen combat.
You're a chemical freak.
I'm a chemical super freak, actually.
And another who's been out of action for 30 years.
Show us on the blueprints.
I can't. My blueprint was in my head. Fortunately, some things you never forget.
But don't worry. It'll all come back to me.
From Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, the producers of Top Gun and Crimson Tide, and Michael Bay, the director of Bad Boys.
Welcome to the Rock.
We got visitors.
Sean Connery.
You sure you're ready for this?
I'll do my best.
Your best? Losers always whine about their best.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage.
Listen, I'm just a biochemist. I drive a Volvo, beige one. So what do you say you cut me some friggin' slack?
Ed Harris.
Fire.
This summer, get ready to rock.
Two things. It's funny that you said that because I didn't say it, but in Diamonds Are Forever, he does look a little like Bob Hoskins, and he's a little jowly and everything. But as he got a little bit older, by the time he did Robin and Marion and stuff like that, he'd kind of come into his own. He'd come into like Connery in his 40s. Cool. Still looking good. And like you said, by the time he was doing Outland, that was in the 80s. He looked great. He looked a lot better than he did in Diamonds Are Forever, which was like 10, 15 years earlier. So, yes, I agree with you.
He actually looked like he had some muscle tone. So I actually think
Yes.
he's done something for The Rock.
Yes. Well, The Rock, he was great. To me, The Rock, and I have to say, Rob, I agree with you. For me, The Rock was Connery playing like Bond older in jail. You know, like they got him.
That's the conceit of the whole movie.
That character was Bond in jail.
Yep. And again, how could you not love that? I love that. Right. That's like the unofficial 7th Connery Bond.
Rob has 2 more, don't you?
Oh,
yes, Rob, what are you 2 more?
Well, wait a minute. So I had The Untouchables, and because I felt with The Untouchables that there was some really hokey dialogue by David Mamet in that film, like Elliot Ness saying, "I have become what I have beheld." And if it wasn't for Connery, I think the movie really just wouldn't have been heralded as what it is today. And I don't think it's a great picture. I think it was great because of him. So he was the glue that held that movie together. And what he did in Indiana Jones was really make fun of himself and show a flair for light comedy that was absolutely brilliant.
I agree with you on everything you just said there, Rob. I do think that Indiana Jones definitely showed his sense of humor, which was always there. And it's sort of like you go back and you look at Sean Connery's movies, you see that sense of humor was always there. I just rewatched The Man Who Would Be King last night and just thoroughly enjoyed it, even though essentially we get to see Sean Connery in blackface, you know, which he pretends to be, you know, Arab or whatever, which is okay. I don't even think they could make that movie now, I have to say, watching that movie. But
they could do it. They would just have to change a few things.
Yeah, they definitely wouldn't have both of them in blackface pretending to be Arabs. I think that part. I think that part might be changed. Yeah.
Welcome, my friends, to India and Afghanistan and Kafirstan. Kafirstan, the remotest place on earth where only Alexander the Great has been before you. With the help of Michael Caine and Sean Connery and Christopher Plummer, we are doing all in our power to tell this wild, funny, and bizarre tale. The Man Who Would Be King.
And now, sir, let me introduce you to Brother Peachy Carnahan, which is him,
and brother Daniel Dravert, which is I. We've been all over India. We know her cities, her jungles, her jails, and her palaces. And we have decided that she isn't big enough for such as we.
Therefore, we are going away to another place, where a man isn't crowded and can come into his own. We're not little men. Detriments, you call us? Detriments? Well, I want to remind you it was detriments like us that built this bloody empire, and he is out to the bloody Raj. And so on. About turn. Finally, quick march. There.
The year is 1885. Not that that matters. For in Kafirstan, time is without beginning or end. It is timeless as Rudyard Kipling's story, The Man Who Would Be King. Look at the size of that ruby.
Here's a bigger one.
Every time, we gotta make a run for it.
Sean Connery, Michael Caine, and Christopher Plummer in John Huston's The Man Who Would Be King.
You guys concur? Lloyd, anything you want to say there on those two?
Yeah, no, I like what Rob was saying about how The Untouchables basically has the reputation it has because of Connery, and that became his career, where they would just build movies around him in a supporting or even a cameo role. And
absolutely,
movie
yeah,
after
like
movie
Highlander.
after movie succeeded.
Like
Highlander,
Highlander.
Time Bandits,
right?
Whatever. The King Arthur one. Well, I mean, they just
it's like
kept
featuring a cameo by Icon. Yeah.
Exactly, and just it's me, it's Sean. You love me, okay? See you later. And people would go see it.
Legitimize it, whatever it was.
Yeah, legitimize the movies. Yeah.
One wanted very much to get. We both agreed that we should have somebody that could be capable of doing all the things like snapping the necks and firing the guns and smoking himself to death and all the chasing and the sex, all the stuff that goes with it, but to have a kind of counterbalance of humor, so that it never really lost itself completely in that kind of serious world of spies. But it had to believe that the guy could be dangerous, and so we played that.
I wanted to take a moment to say how sorry I am about Sean Connery. I know he was 90, and as we often say, oh, 90, I'll take that. But I think everybody who worked with him would say the same thing, what a professional he was. He was such a great professional to work with. I learned so much from him, and he was so kind to me and warm toward me, which he didn't have to be. And I mean, not everybody is unkind or and unsupportive, but not all of them are abundantly so. You know, he was so nice. There's this moment, I think it's at the end of the film, he and I are on the deck of this submarine. It's the end of the movie, The Hunt for Red October, and he has on this leather jacket. And I said, wow, that's a really beautiful jacket. And my God, I said, well, who's the designer? Who made that? He said, the costume department made it for me. I said, oh my God. He said, yes, it's custom made. I said, wow, that's really beautiful. He said, I'll have them make one for you as well. I said, you're kidding me. He said, no. You should get the wardrobe man here. I'd like Alec to have this leather blouson jacket. A copy made for himself. We'll get a fitting, proper fitting. And he has them make me a jacket, and he buys me the jacket. I was like, wow. I was like, you know, this is when I wore leather. I mean, very soon after that, I got into a world where I had to give away all my leather jackets, and I didn't wear leather anymore. But, you know, I've said the same thing. You know, he came on the set of the film, you know, hair, makeup, the whole thing. This is 1989. We shot the movie in the spring of 1989. Our first day shooting was my birthday, April 3rd, 1989. I turned 31 years old the first day we shot. And he arrived and to shoot. And so this is 31 years ago. He was younger than I am now. He's 59. God, I think about that. He was 59. And he came on in the uniform and the hair and the makeup, and my God. I just stood there going, look at this guy. Look at this guy. He's the king. This guy is the king. And he was the king. Handsome as the day is long. And a great actor, you know. That's a rare combination. There's a lot of handsome leading men who are good actors, you know. Cary Grant was a good actor. Tyrone Power was a good actor. He could do very good work. a lot of people who are handsome leading men, Redford, Beatty, Newman, they give great performances. But Sean was just such an original. He's so unique. You know, when I saw the film the first time, I think the first time I saw the film was a benefit in Washington for the Department of the Navy. Like, I remember there was a lot of naval brass there who had cooperated with the permissions and the access to shoot the film. And there he comes on the screen. You know, I was like, wow. Like your fathers and your grandfathers before you, we play our dangerous game with our old adversaries, the American Navy. We sailed into history, he said. Yeah, I work with some great guys, boy. I work with some great people. I work with some great actors. Jimmy Caan, Pacino.
Testing one.
George C. Scott, De Niro, Tony Hopkins. Sometimes small parts, you know, sometimes not big roles. The two biggest roles I played with big actors, I think that's it, Sean and Tony. And Meryl. But I'm talking about people in the legend category. Rest in peace, Sean Connery. You made life better. The work you did, the films you made, the experience you gave me, the kindness you showed me. Thanks for that.
That, of course, was Alec Baldwin giving his personal tribute to Sean Connery on his Instagram. Here's my personal connection to Sean Connery and James Bond that I'll share is that I grew up similar to you, Mike Davis, and I think you said so as well, Lloyd. My dad was into James Bond. He had all the movie soundtracks, so I got to hear the scores. I knew the soundtracks as well as I knew the movies, maybe even more because there was no video back then. I got to hear the score, so I knew the movie soundtracks by heart. I used to even sneak and steal my dad's albums so I could record them. Okay, and then I'd sneak and put them back. But he had all the albums. Later on, my dad revealed to me that my mom had read the Ian Fleming novels in the 50s.
Wow.
And she was a James Bond fan before James Bond was made into movies. So she was as excited and anticipated about seeing them when they came out. And she was a fan. So they were equal fans. My parents were equal fans of James Bond, which sort of blew my mind when I learned that. That being said, we all know as men what it is to be a James Bond or watching a Sean Connery. None of us, we're all heterosexual here, but we all get like Sean Connery was like the coolest of the cool. I had to get a woman's perspective, so we brought in a woman, Leighann Lloyd, to give her perspective on Sean Connery, especially considering, you know, he's a little older. Say hello to Mike Davis, Keith Henry Brown, and Lloyd Goldfine.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Keith. Hey, Lloyd. Nice to be here with you, gentlemen.
We let you into the boys' club.
Yeah, I see that. Should I
Yes,
have
it's the boys'
representation?
club.
Should I have my attorney? Should I just get my hashtag #MeToo ready? What are we doing?
No, you should just be. You have to be wearing a bikini. You have to wear a bikini.
Yeah,
because,
yeah. Just go with that. Go with that.
If
that makes you happy.
Yes,
I'm all about masculine happiness.
Thank you.
It's the only thing that matters, right, Leighann?
Yeah. In this new millennium to get by, you better be making some man happy.
Okay. For those who don't know by now, Leighann Lloyd is an author and a stand-up comedian and has toured the world doing what she does. So, what are your thoughts on Sean Connery?
Oh, goodness. Where do I begin? First of all, I've been listening, and I think Sean Connery affects men a little differently than women. You guys seem to, you know the music, you know the movies. It's Sean Connery. He could get it. You know, when I saw he was 90, I was like, yeah, he can still get it. Now, that probably means I'm going to have to do all the work, but yeah, it's Sean Connery.
Yeah, he had a bad back.
Yeah, that's what all of y'all say. You play high school football for 5 minutes, you got to bend back until you're in your 40s. Okay.
Right.
But I didn't know the New York Times had a lovely write-up about him. And I guess you realize you find out more things that you didn't know once someone passes. And he was quite athletic back in the day.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was Mr. Olympia, whatever.
I had no idea. I mean, understand, by the time I was introduced to Sean Connery, he was Sean Connery, you know, and it's not even that I watched all the James Bond movies. He was just that iconic man who had swagger and style. Like, these things were not mutually exclusive. He was able to put them together, and he would walk into a room and he would be like, like I had English words and they have suddenly evaporated. So he was in and of himself this iconic figure, and it seemed that no matter what movie he was in or no matter what he touched, he made it better. I will say that line for me was crossed when he did the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Listen. He felt the same way because he quit the business after that.
I had no idea. They mentioned that in the article.
Unpleasant experience for him.
For one and all. Now, mind you, he
and for
was
us,
wonderful, but it was a horrible movie. But you know
It was a
what?
horrible
Sean
movie.
Connery gets to do horrible movies. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, listen, believe me, because there are plenty of people who've done, in my opinion, like not one good movie. Can we say Steve Guttenberg? No. Anyway, let me just say that I understand. Let me ask you, what was your introduction to Sean Connery? No, I'm sorry. No. I love Steve. He's a nice guy. He's a nice guy.
It's a great movie. Isn't he?
Okay. It's an ensemble film, right?
Right, but you still said he hadn't done one good movie. But
Okay. All right. You're right. Okay. Technically, he did do one.
And then he did
good
Cocoon,
movie.
wasn't bad, right?
I'm not a big Ron Howard fan. He saw Spielberg like it was borderline.
At that time, that movie was, when it came out, was considered to be good. Anyway, not to interrupt.
Indeed.
It was a hit. It was definitely a hit.
You know
definitely
what,
a
Mike?
hit.
You are building quite the defense for Team Gutenberg. You're building
Team
quite
Gutenberg.
the defense for
Team
that side of
Gutenberg.
the aisle. Well done, and you roped him in with his own words. That was beautiful. You said he's done nothing. What about this film? What about this film?
Well,
Fantastic.
I'm going to disappoint you later because on my list is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's one of my top 5.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
that's
quickly things go
But
south.
but hopefully I can at least win brownie points with you for being honest.
That's right.
Nah.
No, I had to think about it for a second because sometimes women say they want honesty and they're lying. But in this case, yes.
Wait, going back to Sean Connery,
Yeah.
what was your introduction to Sean Connery? You said, at that point,
I can't even tell you. By the time I'm, here and into my movie watching years, he's just him. He's
It's
his
like
own
that-
franchise.
It's that cultural literacy thing. You don't know where you know it, but it just is there from a cultural literacy standpoint, right?
Exactly. Like, how do you
Interesting.
not know Sean Connery? Always James Bond. And that level of masculinity and suaveness, that not every generation creates that, in my opinion.
All right, now I got to ask the two married gentlemen here on the air, which is Mike Davis and Lloyd, who are happily married with women who have their own careers in their own right. What are their thoughts on Sean Connery? Do they like him as much as you? Do they share it? Because one of the things about being either male or female is you can have things that you like because you're a female, but then if you share that with a male, they may like it for another reason, like you said, Leighann, but they still like it. I'll throw to you, Lloyd. What does your wife think of Sean Connery or your love for Sean Connery? Does she think like you're gay for loving Sean Connery, or does she like Sean Connery too?
What?
Yes, she thinks I'm gay. She appreciates Mr. Connery as well. I mean, if not as much, a lot, because he always delivers, no matter what. And I would also say her experience with isn't so much Bond, because those movies were in the past. It was before our history together. So it's all the other films that we've enjoyed. Not that she hasn't seen him as Bond, but Robin and Marion, The Man Who Would Be King, all these other great films and great performances. And so you know that if he's in the film, you're in for a good time, some enjoyment.
For over 6 centuries, the legend of Robin Hood and Maid Marian has inspired hundreds of ballads, books, operas, plays, and movies. And now, the legend becomes a love story. Columbia Pictures presents Sean Connery and Audrey Hepburn in Robin and Marian.
Go fight the sheriffs and the kings. I love you and you make me proud.
I thought the man was dead.
He's back in Sherwood.
Robin is back in Sherwood, I said. We're here to serve you, Robin. And fight against that king.
They're flocking to him in hundreds. He's become a legend. Have you ever tried to fight a legend?
To some, he was a hero who would bring them hope. To some, he was a common thief to be hunted down. To some, he was an enemy to be respected and feared. To Marian, the woman he loved, he was her man.
You're so beautiful.
Come and sit by me.
Sean Connery is Robin Hood. Robert Shaw is the Sheriff of Nottingham. Nicol Williamson is Little John. Richard Harris is Richard the Lionhearted. And in her long-awaited return to the screen, Audrey Hepburn is Marian.
No more scars, Robin. It's too much to lose you twice.
I've never kissed a member of the clergy. Would it be a sin?
Hasn't there been enough for one day?
I won't be long. I'll meet you back at camp.
Don't go.
I just want to look. See who's hunting me.
King was generous. Sends a message. He wants Robin's head.
Oh, mine.
He can sit out there forever.
He can't put a forest under siege.
Well? Well, that's how I see it. If he comes in, we've got him.
Chuck.
We stay here. The man's mad.
You haven't asked what I think.
He's out there, Marian. He expects me.
I think one madman's enough.
I knew you'd come.
Of all men. Just for you.
I know.
This is the return of the spectacle and glory of another age, of heroes who are bigger than life, and villains who are more than evil. The return of a great star, Audrey Hepburn, but most of all, Robin and Marian, is the return of romance.
I love you in sunlight. Most flesh or joy. One more day.
For Robin and Marian, love is the greatest adventure of all.
I love you more than God.
I first saw you in a movie. I tell you what the movie was. It was about 50 years ago, called Hell Drivers. Eh?
Yes, and what else?
No, Stanley Baker, Patty McGowan, and Peggy Cummins. There you are. I can remember all those years ago. But I mean, that's the point. I mean, who'd have thought? Did you think when you were making that movie that, 50 years on, the age of 73, you'd still be you're this huge star?
Well, to be honest, I never thought I would reach 73. And we talk about this, my wife and I, and we both mutually agree that we're not really in our 70s. We're closer to 3. No, it's true, because it's difficult to... I hear, and she says, things come out in the papers and people talk about this and elderly and what have you, and they're in their 60s.
Yeah.
Well, where does it put us? Well, I suppose it's in the mind.
The thing that,
Yeah.
that I would describe why he's got that magnetism is he grew up in sort of a Scottish blue-collar, coal mining sort of mindset. And so he has this tough blue-collar brawler guy, but then somehow that got sort of polished with a international jet-setting white tuxedo quality, right? That he's sort of, you can't see the blue collar in him, but it's there. And that's what makes him better. That Roger Moore is all sort of jet-setter and effete and all that stuff, you know, but he's got this you know, blue collar quality that looks great in a tux, and it's the juxtaposition of those two that makes him so manly. It's hard to be handsome and then also have a face with a lot of character. And Connery's face is very handsome, but it's very distinct, right? And then at the end of the day, the Scottish brogue would just slay you, you know? I mean, it's just such a cool way of talking. And so I think it's the combination of all of those things that makes him awesome, you know?
I think you are exactly right, because I know my type. And I call it Renaissance thug.
Oh, that's perfect.
I want you to be able to quote me Shakespeare and yet defend my honor.
Right.
But can I quote you Shakespeare with a Scottish brogue
any day of the week
in Russian? Stultidornish. Okay. I want to do Shakespeare with a Scottish brogue.
They should have had him in Chernobyl. That's how many accents other than Russian was in HBO Chernobyl.
It's funny what you're saying about Sean Connery, because when you're heterosexual, let's just say, you know, you can sort of like, it's sort of an aesthetic. Like you can understand what, if you're a guy and you're not ever interested in guys, you can understand, oh, well, I can see that he is handsome. Sean Connery had one of those faces and one of those personalities where it's like, yeah, you get it. Like you're attracted to him just from like, you'd want to be him. You'd want to own that kind of cool. But right, you want to be him, but you also understood like why other women. When he did Hunt for Red October, I remember reading a review, and the review began with, "The movie begins with a close-up of Sean Connery's magnificently grizzled face." And I never forgot that. I was like, wow, that's so perfect description. Magnificently grizzled. And that is Sean Connery, you know, especially in that movie. But, you know, the James Bond movies is really only the beginning of Sean Connery and the beginning of Sean Connery's career.
To me, he was the original, the most interesting man in the world.
That's right. That's a good way to describe it. Yep.
Yes.
Well, now, let me ask you a question now for the Sean Connery experts here, and you're going to miss a little bit of this here, Leighann.
That's all right. It's 2020. I'm used to missing quite a bit.
In the 70s, he did a bunch of interesting films. He did films for, you know, in the 60s, he did the Bond films. He did a Hitchcock film, Marnie. He did that Italian film, A Woman of Straw. He was doing what people were doing then. You know, after Clint Eastwood had his success with the spaghetti westerns, people were like, all right, maybe do an Italian film. But by the 70s, he had really broken out of Bond. Besides The Man Who Would Be King, he did The Offense, which is also known as Warning Shot, directed by Sidney Lumet.
Sean Connery as Detective Sergeant Johnson. He's been a cop for 20 years. The things he's seen and done and lived through are destroying him.
Broad streets, back alleys, standing in doorways, dark corners, always night, no one there. Silent, empty, people dying, no one. Bloody dying, no one. Oh, I've seen it.
The Offense.
So I hit him low in the gut and he sort of shook. Now, you won't do that again, not in a hurry. You won't get any more girls, take them in the bushes, have them. Pressing down on them. I thought if I had the knife, I'd cut him. In God's holy name, I'd cut! Cut!
Also starring Trevor Howard.
Who do you bloody think you are? I've been soft with you, Johnson, but there's a limit. There's a bloody limit, and you just got there. You're the only one gets the dirty jobs, are you? You get some special sort of bloody privilege because you have to put up with your share of blood on the walls and guts on the floor. Your share?
With Vivian Merchant.
Talk to me, you said. I'll help you, you said. It's all promises with you. Lovely bloody promises. I'll make you happy, you said. You bloody didn't.
And Ian Bannon.
Nothing I have done can be one half as bad as the thoughts in your head. I wouldn't have your thoughts. I don't have to tell you anything. You know exactly what it's like. You sad, sorry little man.
The things he's seen and done and lived through are destroying him. Sean Connery in The Offense.
Coming into the 80s, my favorite 80s Sean Connery film would be Outland.
Yep.
But I'm going to play the trailer for Outland because for me, part of what you're hearing in the show, you're hearing in the background is, you know, besides being a big Sean Connery fan, I was a big Jerry Goldsmith fan. So whenever Sean Connery could do a film, and he did 6 of them, that Jerry Goldsmith did the score, like, they made that movie for me. You know what I'm saying? Outland was one of the movies. And it's science fiction, so forget about it.
In a mining town, on the second moon of Jupiter, something deadly is happening.
Pretty soon they'll see that this is just like every other mining town. I work these people hard, and I let them play hard. There's never much trouble. We're all professionals.
I'm sure we are. We've only been here 2 weeks. It'll get better, I promise.
I got nothing more on that incident in the mine yesterday. It looks like some guy just went wacko.
It happens here.
How often?
I don't know. It just happens here.
Why?
I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't tell you why. Some people just can't take it here after a while.
What's that guy think he's doing?
No way it could have been homicide. Had to have been a suicide.
28 in the last 6 months.
Did you do autopsy?
No.
Then how do you know it was a suicide?
There's no other explanation.
When a person exposes himself to zero pressure atmosphere, there isn't a whole lot left to inspect.
Something's there, isn't it?
Maybe.
Try and meddle, I want you to know what you're meddling with. How do you leave? You're dealing with grown-ups here.
Bingo.
Marshall, you're dead.
If you're the kind of guy you're supposed to be, you wouldn't stick around. That's why they sent you here.
Maybe they made a mistake.
The ultimate enemy is still man.
I was disappointed. I was like, High Noon in Space, sci-fi was strong. I recently, a long time ago, but after Shoot 'em Up for a brief time, I was developing a remake of Warner Brothers of Land, right?
Really?
Right. I knew it was never ever going to happen, but it was like, you got to keep, your relationships. You got to do free work for the studio, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I was developing it with the guy who had produced the 300 movies. And so I had to dissect Outland. Right. And I went back to High Noon. Right. And in fact, basically, in Outland, his ally character is Frances Sternhagen, or whatever her name is, the old lady, great actress. But her function in the story was the same as with Grace Kelly in High Noon, right? And I'm like, who in the world would place a hot chick's ally character with Frances Sternhagen? It was just like, how do you sell this movie? There was hardly any action, right? The action was really like slow-mo. Oh, he let go of the spaceship and now he's flopping around in outer space. And then he's got Frances Sternhagen. Where are you now? Right? It's just like such a miscalculation. It could have been awesome, right? And again, it falls to me in the annals of disappointment of great anticipation, but it's like Blade Runner. Great look, but not enough there for Mr. Michael Davis.
That was Peter Hyams, right?
Yes, of course it was. Peter Hyams.
So just so we're clear, we're not talking about the Outlander series created by Dina Gabaldon.
No.
And the sexy swashbuckling Scotchman.
No, it's Outlander.
Just so we're clear.
It's High Noon in Outer Space.
High Noon in Outer Space, which is clear.
I actually thought the comic book was better. The Steranko adaptation was practically better than the movie.
Yeah.
Adaptation.
All
right, so
I said adaptation.
You said adaptation. You said adaptation. I'm saying adaptation. We have one more person. To weigh in here. Mike from Jersey is here. So now we technically have three mics here on the phone. What are your? Because I want to go to Mike Davis because I'm kind of interested to see what his Sean Connery favorite films are. Mike from Jersey. What are your five favorite Sean Connery movies? Starting with a Bond. Any one Sean Connery Bond, and 4 non-Bond films.
Well, first of all, hi, guys, and hi, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Hey there, Mike from Jersey. What's up?
What's up? So the Bond, I realize that it's an interesting question as far as Bond goes, because I realize that I'm kind of torn between what I think the best Bond film is as Connery, liking Connery in it, or just overall the best Bond.
I find it so surprising that people have to angst over which is the best Connery Bond, because when we come to me, I mean, it's like there's no comparison, but go on.
My personal favorite is, just as a guilty pleasure, and partly because it's so ridiculous, is You Only Live Twice.
Remind me of the side story, which I thought was really funny, is when Dr. No came out, it succeeded all over the world, but it did lukewarm in France and Japan, and it did poorly in in France because apparently the name Connery sounds like a phrase in France which means has no testicles, right? So he was Sean, I have no testicles, Connery. And then in Japan, they translated the title of Dr. No into The Doctor Is Not In. And that is...
As far as what I think the overall best Bond movie, just taking everything into account, I would say probably Russia with Love.
And your four non-Bond favorites?
My four non-Bond favorites is probably a little bit of a generational thing. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, of course. And also the relationship in that film between the father and son is frighteningly similar to my own. So there's definitely some stuff. My favorite scene, of course, in that film is when they're on the blimp.
Your dad was an archaeologist?
He was not an archaeologist, but he was cantankerous in his ways. And the scene for me that's the best is where they're talking to each other on the blimp is easily the best scene in that film, I think. So Last Crusade, Time Bandits would be another one. And I mean, Connery is King Agamemnon. Come on. Red October, of course. And I got one more, right?
Yep.
What am I forgetting? I'm forgetting...
Nobody just brought up the Anderson tapes. Is it because it has such a downer
I love that movie.
Angry.
Why is that?
They just grabbed 10 years of my life. That isn't enough.
Well, you know the law. You took a chance and you lost. Who are you angry at?
Those sons of bitches that have been going down to their offices and cutting a fat piece out of this country every day.
Do you characterize their actions as similar to yours? Safecracking?
You're goddamn right. What's advertising but a legalized con game? And what the hell's marriage? Extortion, prostitution, soliciting with a government stamp on it. And what the hell's your stock market? A fixed horse race. Some business guy steals a bank, he's a big success story. Facing all the magazines. Some other guy steals the magazine and he's busted.
I love the Anderson
tape. Introducing Christopher Walken.
What's that?
Name of the Rose.
I said that was Christopher Walken's first film. Name of the Rose is one of your favorites?
That's an interesting one, too.
Name of the Rose and Man Who Would Be King would be on that list.
Interesting. Mr. Brown, are you still there?
I am.
What are your top 5 Connery, considering top Bond and then top 4 favorites?
Almost everything that I have here has been mentioned, but I'll mention it again. For me, it's From Russia with Love. Just the one that I always gravitate towards. It's one of those kind of movies where, I'll be walking past the TV and it's on or something, or it's on in the background, and I stop and I sit down and watch the entire thing. I don't know, just dug that one. I'm not going to go into details because we've already talked about it at length, but yeah.
And what about your top 4 non?
The Gypsy Fight.
The Gypsy Fight. That's really why he watches it,
exactly.
The Gypsy Fighting.
He's like that the actor that played Karam Bey was dying of cancer.
I know. He was dying of cancer. Yes, I know. That was his last film. Last film. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He was a well-known actor in his country. And that was his last film.
Yeah. And he was great in one movie.
Yes, he was. Ali Karim Bey. Okay, so Mr. Brown, your 4 non-Bond.
Somebody mentioned Robin and Marion, which I really deeply love.
Classic. Classic.
For over 6 centuries, the legend of Robin Hood and Maid Marian has inspired hundreds of ballads, books, operas, plays, and movies. And now, the legend becomes a love story. Columbia Pictures presents Sean Connery and Audrey Hepburn in Robin and Marian.
Go fight the sheriffs and the kings. I love you and you make me proud.
I thought the man was dead.
He's back in Sherwood.
Robin is back in Sherwood, I said. We're here to serve you, Robin. And fight against that king.
They're flocking to him in hundreds. He's become a legend. Have you ever tried to fight a legend?
To some, he was a hero who would bring them hope. To some, he was a common thief to be hunted down. To some, he was an enemy to be respected and feared. To Marian, the woman he loved, he was her man.
You're so beautiful.
Come and sit by me.
Sean Connery is Robin Hood. Robert Shaw is the Sheriff of Nottingham. Nicol Williamson is Little John. Richard Harris is Richard the Lionhearted. And in her long-awaited return to the screen, Audrey Hepburn is Marian.
No more scars, Robin. It's too much to lose you twice.
I've never kissed a member of the clergy. Would it be a sin?
Hasn't it been enough for one day?
I won't be long. I'll meet you back at camp.
Don't go.
I just want to look. See who's hunting me.
King was generous.
Sends a message. He wants Robin's head.
Oh, mine. He can sit out there forever. He can't put a forest under siege.
Well, that's how I see it. If he comes in, we've got him.
Chuck, we stay here. The man's mad.
You haven't asked what I think.
He's out there, Marian. He expects me.
I think one madman's enough.
I knew you'd come.
Of all men. Just for you.
I know.
This is the return of the spectacle and glory of another age, of heroes who are bigger than life, and villains who are more than evil. The return of a great star, Audrey Hepburn, but most of all, Robin and Marian, is the return of romance.
I love you more than sunlight, more than flesh or joy. One more day.
For Robin and Marian, love is the greatest adventure of all.
I love you more than God.
Mike, I just want to say for a
I
second,
didn't know
I
who-
have to give you credit because for whatever reason, I somehow was able to go years without seeing this movie, and you pushed this film on me, and I saw it, and it is, in fact, amazing.
Now,
It's
Leighann, did you ever hear of this film?
incredibly mature. You know, it's not. You know, you would think that a film about Robin Hood and everything would be like a lot of swashbuckling. It's mostly about relationships. It's
Fantastic.
About when everybody's gotten
That's
older and everybody's not running around as much, and it's just how do you deal with old age? So it's actually kind of perfect for Sean Connery because he was getting older. He had left Bond. He was going to another phase of his career as an older leading man, and this film just fell perfectly into that mode. And also Audrey Hepburn, who was kind of stopped making films. And I became aware of The Hill very recently. I was watching a documentary about Lumet, and then they mentioned it, and I said, God, I never seen that. Amazing cast. Ossie Davis, Michael Redgrave, and Sidney Lumet, directed. I mean, I was there, and it couldn't be further away from Bond. It's nuts. It's very serious, it's very dark, it's black and white. It's sad, it's brutal. I would definitely say watch that movie. And then Mike, you said The Man Would Be King. Hunt for Red October, we've mentioned. That's another one. And that's it.
Fantastic.
And also, Mike from Jersey mentioned Time Bandits. It's one of my favorite performances by him. He's not in there long. It's really a cameo.
Really?
I think it's a cameo, but I think it was just a super effective cameo. To me, it lent weight to the whole thing.
Yeah.
So,
agreed.
Wow.
And by the way, Mike, I just
can't
want to say I
disagree.
didn't have an attaché case, but I did have the Hunt for Red October board game.
Okay.
Which actually predates.
Well, I didn't know they
film.
had.
It actually predates the film.
October. Coming back to Sean Connery and what he represented, and he represented more than just a movie star, more than just Scotland, more than just a larger-than-life secret agent. He represented masculinity. You know, one of the things that Sean Connery did, you know, as we saw later in his films, was even embrace his baldness, which seems like it should be nothing, but that was something. It was something. He wore a toupee in many films. For him to not have the toupee and still be considered tough or hard or all the things that masculinity is defined, one of the things that Sean Connery did, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Leighann, as a woman, is help redefine what masculinity is and what an icon is and what an actor is and what it means to be a man on screen. Do you agree?
I do agree. You know, if you and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, but prior to that, you had that John Wayne image of masculinity, which, you know, unless you like to be beaten on Saturday nights, not really the guy.
Stop.
Well, that's the white Republican image.
Right, yeah.
But, you know, I have to ask you, maybe Leighann can shed some light on this, okay? You've seen how much I love James Bond, and I got about 8 of them in my room that I'm looking at right now, okay? Now that I've lived all this life and, you know, get a little bit of wisdom, I feel a little bit uncomfortable with the sexist imagery in these posters. That I love the posters, I love the movies, but now when I look at them where they objectify women and they're these sex objects, and that the man is the one, you can, even though it's not quite shown in the poster, you know the man is the knight in shining armor. You see these women either doting over him, like, you know, kneeling down in front of him, or they're tied up and he's the man with the gun. And to me, they're these uncomfortable images of, oh, the man has to be the hero. The man is the strong one. The woman is the prize. The woman is the object. In these movies that I love, but now I'm very uncomfortable with the messaging of these old posters. How do I deal with that? Or what should I think?
Wait, before you answer that, Leighann, can I just ask you, Mike, to qualify that? Mike, do you say this as a man who has lived being a man, or do you say this as a man who has raised daughters?
If it was only because of raising daughters that I got that meant that I wasn't listening to the rest of the world. If I was never a father, never a husband, but just reading the paper, becoming older and wiser, and seeing how the world is unfair towards women. I have this statement that I wish that people would put out there is, if from the dawn of time there had been no suppression of women's rights or not keeping women as equal, we would have at least twice the amount of scientific invention. We would have doubled our ability to solve our problems, double our ability to feed the planet, double our ability to have medicines, double the amount of art that we had in the world. Our suppression of half of the human population from being their best has held us back. You know, we could have doubled our progress. You know, it's just so stupid that even now we are still talking about it. You know what I mean?
I'm going to go on ahead and call it and say you win.
Well, but it's true, but it's also frustrating. And you can also apply that similar. It's easier in the gender thing, but if you're talking about race and you can apply that. You know, the suppression. You know, the prejudice against your culture, your religion, your race has prevented the world from progressing exponentially. Right?
Yeah. I agree. I think the future the future there's depicted in 2001, we could have had that if we had what you were talking about.
Yeah.
You mean an evil computer that makes decisions for us? Because I think we're there now.
All right. Well, I have to hear you, Leighann. What's your thoughts there, Leighann?
About these sexist posters I have up?
You know, there's a dangerous tendency to judge things out of their time. Yes, once we know better, hopefully we do better. And the fact that you even see the difference is progress. So I think we have to embrace the evolution of thought and not erase where we came from, because if we do that, then we no longer see. We're not drawing the distinction. We're not seeing the difference. Okay. So I think it's okay to see that and be uncomfortable. There's tons of things.
It's okay to keep them up. I have my daughters are in high school. They know how much I love James Bond. But
why wouldn't that be a conversation starter?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Because they didn't grow up with it, and sometimes what you don't grow up with, we can see right now that we, for several generations, have taken certain freedoms for granted because we didn't know the before. We weren't taught the before. And so I think the tendency that we have to, evolve and then just want to sweep everything under the rug like it didn't happen is the exact recipe for recreating those things that we swept under the rug.
Yeah, well, you did remind me, and then we're off of the Sean Connery thing, but the last thing I would have to say is I remember as a kid, teenager, and then growing up in college, walking by newsstands, you'd look at Cosmopolitan and you'd go, how to become the boss, how to run your own company, or how to talk to your boss so he sees you as an equal. All of these articles that were, and obviously in the bookstores, all of these resources of helping women understand the evolving world, how they could be stronger, how they could take advantage of it. But I don't remember in men's magazines from Esquire to Playboy or even just Time Magazine or the Washington Post, there was very little effort in the male community of re-educating us or helping us be better men and better partners and better equals in promoting women. We still, while all this sort of cosmopolitan education of women was going on for decades, we would still get the sexist, the Sports Illustrated, the new swimsuit issue. None of the pop culture, none of the imagery that we were surrounded with helped us become better people to make women equal, and by that we would have learned to make everybody else equal. We didn't get, I feel like, I never got an education when I still was, the images that I were shown are similar to the Bond images I was shown. You can still look at 80s movies posters with the beautiful girl on the cover, or you go watch Charlie's Angels. Well, I'm just seeing the pretty girls. There was no help in making me more of a modern man in literature, in nonfiction, in journalism.
There is some lacking. There's plenty of room for, I hate to use the word allyship, but we're still because women don't win without the help of men, and I'm sure there are some women that will be angry with that statement. But think of in 1920s when white women got the right to vote. Who had the power to give that to them? It wasn't other women. It was men. Jimmy Carter, believe it or not, actually has a wonderful TED Talk about this. Why women are where they are, he goes, because men don't care. I mean, he literally said that. So you are absolutely putting your finger on the pulse of something where we definitely need room for improvement. And at the moment, it seems like we're taking some giant steps backward in terms of women's rights, relations between women and men, both sides thinking, and I hate to be binary, but I'm just, answering the way that you asked. But we're not doing well together. And it's like we're not, we will get a little bit closer, and now we're even more further apart than before. Like, we don't realize there are folks in both camps that think, well, women are smarter than men. No, they're not. Men are stronger than women. Some of you guys I could knock out, but none of this is the point. I don't get how, like you said, we are not leveraging 50 to 52% of our population. I would take one less drone. I would take one less gun, one less bullet if we could, manage and advance knowing how the human mind works, knowing how culture works, investing in that.
I think that's very much so, and in being active and in keeping working too, which is very important.
Oh yes, it's nice, the money.
I mean, the other thing too. I mean, you've reached the age of 73 without losing it in the sense that you've been voted the sexiest man of the century, for God's sake.
Well, they have great taste. Listen, I don't take that seriously.
Right, listen, there you are. The latest film, again, is an action movie. You don't just continue a career, you continue playing action heroes. You obviously like that genre of movie.
Yes. Well, it's kind of interesting that I don't have a problem in going into any kind of clothes or no clothes for films, in terms of being concerned about period films or whatever. And I think that if you have that attitude, it's much easier to make the transition, whether it's period or whatever. Some actors, I think, have impose a self-limitation by being uncomfortable in a toga or monk's habit or whatever. And I think that you have to make the leap. You have to make of yourself to do it. And that's the most important stage to learn as an actor.
Is it?
Yes, to make an absolute of yourself. All up of yourself. I know you're censored here.
Not at all, we're not. You're free, you go for it, Sean. There's no problem at all here.
All right, well, being a
the one word he won't allow you.
You asked for it.
And I got it. Okay. So, the film is called The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yes.
And it's based on what they call those picture books, isn't it? Those,
what we used to call comic books,
comic
like
books.
the Dandy and the Beano, but they're quite different.
Like I said, you are still tuned to listener-sponsored radio, WBAI 99.5 FM in New York. This is Night Shift. I'm Mike Sargent. I'm here with Mike Davis. Are you still there,
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Leighann, Lloyd?
I'm still here.
You want me to give you my other four CONNERYs?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, so the next one would probably be The Rock, because it is a really great film all around, and the filmmaking is awesome. I just like movies that are about escapism, and I loved all the different the superhero heroes in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and I love the fact that some of them were based on literary heroes that never really got their own movie, and I liked the production design, and I liked, going on the Nautilus, and I liked the bad guys with these armored robots and the steampunk quality, and it's full of things that don't make sense, but I just love the array of imagination and imagine the characters in it. That to me, it was a lot of fun. The last Connery movie is not that good, but I'm going to put down Medicine Man on that.
Listen.
Storyboard artist on it, and I was down in Mexico.
Did you really?
Watch Connery work. So
Nice. You was listen. First of all, Jerry Goldsmith did the score.
What's that?
Really? You never said anything? No, Jerry Goldsmith did the score.
I would walk 20 paces behind him and listen to him.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Did I ever tell you my Sean Connery story?
Nope.
Okay. It's very tame. Okay. It was right around the time I had just become film critic for WBAI. It's around 2000. It's for the film Finding Forrester. I'll play the trailer. And I'm at the premiere, and it's at the Ziegfeld, which is a theater I knew very, very well. Right. And for those who are listening who have never been to a premiere, when you go to a premiere, you're the invited audience, whoever you are that happen to be on the less press or just celebrity friends, whatever, connected. And then there's a red carpet that's usually in front of the theater, and so all the stars are going to be there at the screening, but they're getting their pictures taken. So I'm in, I got my seat set up, whatever, and I'm coming back out into the lobby to go to the bathroom. And then as I'm coming out of where you exit from the theater seats to the lobby, Sean Connery walks into the lobby. And he's walking towards me, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, it's Sean Connery! And he walks up to me and he goes, how's it going? And then he just like, and I'm like,
and you fainted.
Exactly. I'm like, and he walks by and he goes into the theater, and in my mind, it's like, for 30 seconds, Sean Connery knew I existed. So there it is. Great. That's my Sean Connery story.
That's great.
All right. Well, I want to thank my panel here and those who have hung till the very end, till the bitter end. Ms. Lloyd,
sir,
thank you. And how can people find you?
The easiest access point to all things me is veryfunnylady.com. But please, by all means, seek me out on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. You will be more than entertained. You will be enlightened and entertained.
Oh, there it is. And Mr. Davis, where can people find things?
Michael Davis from ConneryvilleForUSSenate.com.
And that's how you do a callback, everybody. That's exactly how you do a callback. Well done, sir.
No, thank you. All you.
Okay. So people, you can find Michael Davis. Just go to IMDb, put in Michael Davis. You'll find him. Mike from Jersey.
Well, if the Tuesday election goes badly, I may not exist on this planet anymore because I may just be done. But if it does go well, then you can reach me at Green Cleaver, all double E's, greencleaver@gmail.com.
That's, again, your serial killer email. It sounds like a serial killer. And this has been Night Shift. We're on every week from 10 p.m. till midnight on Monday, and on listener-sponsored radio, WBAI. If you've enjoyed this show, please consider making a pledge in the name of Night Shift. Go to give2WBAI.org. That's give2WBAI.org. And you can make a pledge for $15 a month to become a WBAI buddy in the name of Night Shift. Thank you all.
Election Day 2020 is just about behind us, but however long it takes us to learn the results and whoever wins, there are going to be huge questions about what it all means for New York City. Meanwhile, the 2021 city races for mayor and dozens of other offices are already well underway.